Well, good morning. It's my privilege to bring you the word on Wednesday. My name is Norma Maclean. I'm a member here at Martin's Memorial Church. I've been a member here since 2008. In the January of 2008, I actually came to an Alpha course at Martin's Memorial, and I believe it was the first Alpha course that they had ever run. And through attending that Alpha course, my life was completely transformed, and I came to faith in Jesus. So before I share with you what I'd like to share, I'd just like to encourage anybody who is seeking to find Jesus. If you hear of an Alpha course, grab it with both hands. It's a great course. It's very relaxed, and it was something that had an amazing and life-changing effect upon myself. So when Brian asked me to share, I did say that it was both a privilege, but it was a scary prospect. So please bear with me. I'm extremely nervous, and I feel a bit crazy sitting here talking to myself, basically, seeing myself on screen. And I'm also actually looking at myself and seeing this armchair, and it was reminding me of people of another vintage will remember the Reverend I.M. Jolly. And I do hope that I'm slightly less comedic and slightly more jolly than he actually was. So when I asked the Lord, is there something that you would like me to share? And there were two things that he brought to my mind. And from those two things, and marrying those two things together, there was a third thing came from that. So the first thing that he brought to my mind was something that had been shared at our ladies' Bible study a couple of weeks ago. We're studying the book of Ephesians in the ladies' Bible study. And one of the girls had this particular book at home. It's called Sit, Walk, Stand by Watchman Nee. And it is about the book of Ephesians. It's based on the book of Ephesians. But this was something that she read from that particular book, and it really had an impact upon me at the time. And it's talking about the sitting with God. And it said, I'll just read it from the book if you don't mind, folks. This was God's principle from the beginning. In the creation, God worked from the first to the sixth day and rested on the seventh. We may truthfully say that for those first 6 days, he was very busy. Then, the task he had set himself completed, he ceased to work. The seventh day became the Sabbath of God. It was God's rest. But what of Adam? Where did he stand in relation to that rest of God? Adam, we are told, was created on the sixth day. Clearly then, he had no part in those first 6 days of work, for he came into being only at their end. God's seventh day was in fact Adam's first. Whereas God worked 6 days and then enjoyed his Sabbath rest, Adam began his life with Sabbath, for God works before he rests, while man must first enter into God's rest, and then alone can he work. And that made me think about not just the Sabbath day, not just Sundays as we have them now, but before we actually are called to do any work for God, we need to spend that time resting with him and being with him. That was his plan all along, to rest with him, to be with him, and from that place to find our strength and to find our purpose. So that sort of set me thinking about that. That rest, for me, anyway, is best done first thing in the day. I find that my days go so much better when I've set that time aside where I can actually sit down, I can read the Bible, I can pray, I can just spend time with him. I find the days where I do that go so much better than the days where I've slept in, I've got to be at a meeting, or I've got somewhere to go, I've got an appointment somewhere, and I just haven't found the time to do that first thing in the morning. And those days never seem to go nearly so well as the days where I have spent time with God. The second thing that he spoke to me was about connection. And this actually came to me through a Zoom meeting. I'm sure you've all been on Zoom meetings over these past number of months where we haven't been able to meet physically with each other. So we've had the ladies' Bible study, we've had home groups on Zoom, and it's quite amusing at times where we're all sort of coming online and we're saying, you need to enable your audio, I can't hear you, or perhaps, the line is a bit distorted at times, which a couple of our ladies, I don't know what the problem is, I don't know if it's their equipment or the line or whatever, but quite often when they speak, it actually just sounds like the clangers, and it's just nobody can understand what they're saying. And I'm not casting aspersions on those ladies in relation to this, but it actually just made me think about God at that time. It made me think about sometimes, we don't hear God, or sometimes maybe he doesn't hear us. And it made me think, what are the barriers to us hearing God, or to him hearing us? And when I thought about, there were just three things that came to my mind at that point. Sometimes it's pride on our part. Sometimes we think, I don't need you to do this, God, I can do this myself. I've done this so often in the past myself. I've prayed to God, for some situation or for some help with something. And when it hasn't happened by the next morning, when it hasn't been that instantaneous answer that I've wanted, then I've just taken it back and tried to do it myself and interfere. And I have to say, it's never ever worked out. The second thing that I thought might be a barrier was fear. Sometimes we're fearful of what God might say to us. We know ourselves, and he knows us. And we're fearful that he might say something that we would find, challenging in some way to us. Or we might find that it's a rebuke in some way. But I think we have to understand that when God tells us in his word that he has plans and purposes for us, plans to prosper us and not to do us harm, plans to give us a hope and a future, then we have to understand that even though something might seem like a rebuke or it might be a challenge, that if it's God's plan, it's a good plan. And we just have to be able to understand that and go with it. And the third thing that sometimes is a barrier to us hearing God and also him hearing us is bitterness. Sometimes we hold grudges or resentments in our lives. And we know that he tells us in his word that if we don't forgive, then we are not forgiven and he will not hear us. And if he doesn't hear us, then we don't hear him. So those were just three of the things. I know there'll be other things, but those were just three of the things that came to my mind at that time. And the third thing that came to my mind, the first obviously was resting, the second thing was connecting. And what came out of those two particular things was trusting. When I rest with God, spend time with him, spend time praying, spend time reading his word, spend time in his presence, spend time listening and connecting with him, then my trust in him develops. I get to know him so much better. I know his character. Jesus says to us in the Bible that my sheep know my voice. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. When we get to know him, we listen for his voice. He knows us and we can follow him. So those things about trusting can only come about by resting with Him and connecting with Him, getting to know Him so much better, and being able to put our full trust in Him. So I hope you found this useful. I hope it's been an encouragement to you. And I hope at some point in the future that we'll be able to meet each other face to face again in Martin's Memorial. We can actually do that at the moment at the prayer meetings on Wednesday night. If you haven't been, please come to the prayer meetings on Wednesday nights. They've been great. They've been so encouraging, and it's just so amazing to be there and feel the presence of God being there. But I just say goodbye to you for now, and God bless, and thank you for listening to me.